Hello, this is Angus King for Maine Veterans Voices, a project involving the Congressional Library, the Library of Congress, and veterans across Maine and my office, where each month I interview a veteran in Maine about their experience. These will be recorded interviews that will be at the Oral History Project at the Library of Congress. Our guest today is Deb Couture, who's a resident of Maine, has an amazing career in the Navy. And Deb, thank you so much for joining us. And give me some background. Tell me where you were born, started out, a little bit about your family, and then we'll talk about your military service.
Was born in Augusta, Maine. Went to school in Farmingdale, Halldale High School. Attended University of Maine at Orono initially, and then at the young age of 19, married my high school sweetheart, and he was in the Navy at the time, so we moved away. So I ultimately finished my bachelor's and master's in other states because we were stationed all over the country. So
you started your military career as a Navy spouse, not as a member of the service. But going back a bit, wasn't your dad in the service?
Yeah, my dad went in at the end of World War II. My maiden name is Dodge, so his name was Carroll Dodge. And then he stayed in the reserves, drilling in Augusta down at Capitol Park. And then when the Korean War started, he went back on active duty and served over in the Korean area with the Seabees, which I didn't know until later when I became a Seabee, that he had served in the same, or I served in the same area that he did. So that was interesting.
That's amazing. That's full circle. Okay. Yeah. You're a Navy spouse. What provoked you to decide to enlist or to join up yourself?
It goes back to my childhood. My dad ultimately became or was a 100% disabled vet. My brother and I both went to school on the old GI Bill, under him. And we used to go down to Brunswick a lot. Dad, actually, I did this in a little speech at one point when we did the groundbreaking for the memorial down in Brunswick a little over a year ago. But I was in the car with Dad because he loved to go down to the Brunswick Naval Air Station all the time. He couldn't drive.
Have you seen the memorial down here in Brunswick now that it's finished? It's really fabulous.
I have. I've been there several times. Yes, my husband and I have bricks there.
Oh, that's great. No, it's I've been there. I live a few blocks away, and you can't walk by it without being sort of captured by the stories and the stones, and it's a wonderful facility. So you remembered coming down here with your dad?
I do. I love the base. It was just because all what Dad wanted was his cigarettes, but that's beside the point. So he could buy inexpensive cigarettes down at the base. But just remember, his stories, what little he told us about his time. And my cousin was serving at that time in Vietnam when I was, younger. And it's just, we always had, all of my uncles served in World War II. My aunt, two of my aunts lost their husbands in World War II. It's just growing up in a kind of a military family and hearing of the stories, and I just wanted to do the same thing.
Well, I have to say, you mentioned the base. What we're talking about here is the Brunswick Naval Air Station, which was part of the life of the Mid-Coast for 40 or 50 years. It was closed as part of a BRAC process, and I have to say, Deb, a lot of the jobs have been replaced. We now have all kinds of businesses out there. It's been very successfully redeveloped. But as a Brunswick resident, we miss the Navy. What we've lost is the diversity, the people from all over the country, the Little League coaches. The best football coach my son ever had was a chief petty officer at the base. And that's something you can't replace. I think it's too bad to not have that military presence in the community.
Yes, we miss it a lot. And My favorite deli is down there on the old base, so, I love to go there and get sandwiches and everything. So there are a lot of nice, good businesses and everything down there, but we do miss it, we miss the commissary, which used to be in Topsom and,
Sure.
things like that. So,
So you joined the service. Did you go in? What kind of program did you go in? Were you out of college at this point? Did you go to OCS or did you enlist? Tell me about your early career in the Navy.
because I wanted to go in, I finished my undergraduate and I knew what the military was taking because after Vietnam and things were downsized considerably. And so I finished my master's in healthcare administration because I knew that they were accepting medical service corps officers for commission. So after I finished my master's in 86, then I requested a commission into the medical service corps in the Navy. Um, and at that point in time, my husband, Chris, was still on active duty. He had gone through OCS, and they told me that there may not be a good chance of us being stationed together, and we had very small children. So they asked me if I wanted to go to the reserve side. So I did choose at my commissioning to go reserve initially, so that I could still be with my family, and everything. It's changed so much. It's great now. We don't have to worry about that, but it wasn't that way, many years ago.
So now the military is better about being sure that married couples can stay together. Is that right?
Yes, yeah. It's much better for families now. It's changed so much. It's really good. So,
So your role was medical planning. Tell me what that meant in practical terms.
okay, in practical terms, it's making sure that all of the sailors, Marines, and that the Navy's responsible for medically are prepared medically to deploy. So we can't send somebody off to someplace in Africa if they don't have the right immunizations. We have to make sure that they're ready to go. My duties with the Seabees also, you know, as I mentioned earlier this week and talking with Teague and Zachary, that I felt like I was the mother of 16,000 children, making sure that they when we'd go to South Korea and nobody had protective goggles on, and they're out there doing stuff in the field there, or, in Kuwait or something, I'm kind of short. So, it was trying to get some of these people to listen to me, but, it was,
Well,
I loved every minute of it, but.
well, what are some of the different places where you served? You mentioned Korea. That was toward the end of your career, wasn't it?
My first time in Korea was in 2002. Went back again in 2006, in 2008 twice. So yeah, the last time I was there was 2008, I believe. I'd have to look at I keep a list of where I was because there were so many places, but
Well, how
um,
about how about the Middle East? Did you serve in the Middle East?
yeah, we were sent there in 2006 to capture. We went into Kuwait, and by capture I mean on the medical side. I was responsible for what's called the pre and post deployment health assessments. So when our Seabees went into Iraq or Afghanistan or Africa or whatever, they completed those, and so we were piloting the post deployment health assessments at Camp Arifjan in Kuwait. I did go up into Fallujah to work briefly with the Marines in Fallujah because the Marines were piloting a handheld computer device at that point in time so that the Marines could fill out the post-deployment health assessments as they were leaving Iraq, so that they wouldn't be held up someplace. Everybody, when they left in country, they want to be home. And what we were doing was we were bringing them into Kuwait and having them complete this with a little bit of downtime. And even that 5 to 7 day downtime was very difficult to get, the men and women focused because they knew they were going home. And so we're trying to figure out a better way, to do this so that they could go straight home. So, but anyway, so
Well,
it was, trial and error, but.
well, we've sort of glossed over the term Seabee, uh, which I remember, from reading about World War II. The Seabees, as I recall, were the sort of naval engineers that built things. Am I correct? Give me a definition of the Seabees.
Yeah, you've ever seen the monument down just outside of Arlington and the Women's Memorial? I think it sums it up pretty well that we build, we fight with compassion for others. So they build bridges, they build, the buildings, the airstrips. Not as much in the airstrips now as they did in Vietnam and prior, conflicts, but they do build, and they are the engineers. So they always like to compete against the Army Corps of Engineers, when we were sending them different places. So
Well,
it was,
now didn't you attain a rank in the Seabees that was unique for a woman?
what it actually was, and it was not male or female. I actually in 2008, in 2007, I received a waiver from the head of the Civil Engineer Corps to attempt to get my CB warfare, combat warfare designator. And because I was Medical Service Corps, usually the only ones that could actually accomplish that were Seabees that were attached to a battalion. So they were the electricians, that sort of thing, or our CEC officers. So I received a waiver from our 3-star, and it took me about 18 to 20 months, but I did test out over 17 hours of testing to plus deployments and field exercises and everything else with the Seabees to attain the CB warfare qualification. After I attained that, they decided that they did not want to grant any more waivers, and so they cut that off. And so my claim to fame is being the only Medical Service Corps officer in the Navy, active or reserve, to become CB warfare qualified. So
Well, that you got to hold on to that. I mean,
I have my SKUs. They call them SKUs. So I have my CB combat warfare, my SKUs.
And I'm amazed that it took the Pentagon 18 months to get it all squared away. I mean, that.
I had to complete classes, and I deployed with them several times, and field exercises at, up in Northern California, out there at, all over
Now,
the place.
your degree was in medical administration. Did you, at any time during this, did you pick up nursing credentials, or so your job was setting up the structure and being sure that the proper rules were being followed?
Yeah, and earlier on, though, when I was commissioned, and then I was on active duty during Desert Shield, Desert Storm, and then for about the next 6 or 7 years after that, I was my Navy officer building codes were in finance and healthcare administration. So I went to like Jacksonville, to Portsmouth Naval Hospital, to Bethesda, Bureau of Medicine and Surgery in DC. Didn't actually have to go out to San Diego, but Groton, Connecticut, other hospitals. So I did usually fiscal supply at those hospitals. So I worked at those, but that was before I requested to get the special designator, what the Navy calls NOBC, the Navy Officer Building Code for medical planner. So I had to go to other schools.
Have you ever sat down and made a list of and a count of all the places where you've been stationed?
No, but when I retired in 2012, actually, the guy, one of the Seabees that actually he built my shadow box for me, I had to go through all my orders, and I had to give him all that because they put it on a brass plaque in the middle of my shadow box. So then I finally found out where I was, where I'd been.
Now, you were in Washington. You were at the Bethesda Naval Hospital for a time.
Yes, I was at Bethesda and spent a lot more time at the Bureau of Medicine Surgery, right across from where it used to be, right across from the State Department. So we were right up, on the hill there. I guess it's housing for people now. I'm not sure what they did with it. When we became tri-service with our medical back around 2011, 2012, and they moved everybody out of DC. I don't know who took it over, but that's where BUMed was right on the hill there. There's I forget what it's called, but anyway, it had been part of Navy medicine since, the Civil War. So
Now, you were in the Navy during a period from the 80s into 2012. Talk to me about what you saw as change during that period. And particularly as a woman, did you see changes in attitude, changes in acceptance? Did you feel that there was discrimination when you first went back in the 80s?
um yeah, when I went in the 80s, I've always been the type of individual, I guess I can say female, who wanted to do something different and wanted to break ground in some place maybe where nobody really wanted you to, or maybe there were more struggles. So as I told Tegan Zach the other day, when I went to Orono, it was like there were two women in the accounting and business administration program, and I'm like, I'm for that. I'm going to be in that program because there's only two women back in the early 70s. So, but yeah, I saw such a change. And it's, how do I put this? It's great to be friendly, and I mean, everybody likes to give hugs and stuff, and I do too. But the way that women were treated and things in the late 80s and into the early 90s, yeah, it was not the greatest. Oh dear. Let's see. Well,
Well, I mean, I don't want to put you in an uncomfortable position, but I've been serving on the Armed Services Committee for 9 years now, and one of the subjects that we've been coping with every single year is sexual assault in the military, and it's a very difficult issue because people are thrown together under difficult circumstances. But I hope and believe that we're making some progress.
yeah, as I mentioned to Teague and Zach the other day, I am horrified that there's still so much going on. And I've made this statement, it seems like a million times, but not a million. But when Tailhook happened, it was a terrible thing that happened. However, to me, that was I think that helped women in the military, because
Mhm.
it brought to light what was going on and what was happening. And I think that out of that, I personally felt more respect. So it was a terrible thing that happened. However, it changed the way I saw things going on, in the military. So, and maybe I was naive to, other things that were happening, but a lot of the women vets that are like in my Legion post, we've had conversations, and most of them served through the 70s and into the 80s, and into some of them into the 90s, and they saw the same thing. They saw things get better, as the 90s came into
Well,
play.
I certainly
So
hope so. And as I say, we're still working on it. Just this
yeah,
week, we're working on the National Defense Authorization Act, which has some significant changes in the law, in the Code of Military Justice.
good.
Now, what about after the service? You didn't quit serving. You're now I should have said this at the very beginning. You're the commander of the Legion in Maine, isn't that true? Are you the first female commander that we've had?
No, no, I'm the fourth.
Okay,
Yep.
good.
In 102 years. There's been 4 of us, and the first one was, I believe, in 92. And then Mona was in 99, and then we had another woman commander about 10 years ago, and myself, and we have a number of women in the pipeline that, will be coming to that position, I know, over the next decade. So,
Are you seeing seeing the younger veterans, the global war on terror veterans joining the Legion, joining VFW service organizations? I sometimes worry that the younger veterans aren't taking advantage of what's available in the VSOs.
I'm seeing it. In fact, right close to your hometown, we have a post down in Topsom, post 202, that it's the first post that, received a new charter, and it was named after an individual that was killed in Iraq. So, and their commander is a female young lady. She's doing a wonderful job there. A lot of young veterans, and we have a lot of young veterans all over the different posts. I'm proud of my post in Litchfield. We have a lot of post 9/11 members there. And yes, many of them served at the old base, and they chose to stay in Maine. So we love it, So
That's great.
they made their homes in Bowdoin and Bowdenham and Litchfield, and, they're close to Brunswick, but, so we, brought them into the Legion. So I
Well,
think we did pretty well. So
you'll be happy to know that the day before you and I are having this conversation, the Senate Committee on Energy and Natural Resources approved a bill, which is going to the floor of the Senate, hopefully fairly soon, for a memorial for the global war on terror veterans on the Mall in Washington. Sponsored, one of the lead sponsors is Jared Golden from Maine.
Oh, wow, yeah, I know Jared.
Well, it's a great thing, and we just voted it out of the committee, as I say, the day before you and I are talking. So I think that's overdue recognition. I think it'll mean a lot to a lot of veterans.
Yes, that's great. I'm thrilled about that. That's great. So, yeah, I'll be back down to see that eventually. So I love DC. My last tour of duty was at the Pentagon, so I enjoyed that a lot, and I actually lived in Arlington. So
So you were at the Pentagon, still in the field of medical planning and setting up, making sure the arrangements were appropriate. Now, I also heard, at one time, weren't you in a place where you had to tell people they had lost a soldier or console people?
that was one of the things I was trained to do. However, fortunately, Desert Shield, Desert Storm did not last long enough, so we did not have any individuals that were killed from the Connecticut, Rhode Island area, because I was at a naval hospital in Groton, Connecticut at the time, and CACO, Casualty Assistance Calls Officer, was one of my areas that I was responsible for. But no, I did not have to
Okay, well,
make
that's
that.
good.
So I was
Well,
very fortunate. But
one of the things that I worry about it, you're well aware of the suicide rate among veterans and what a terrible thing it is. Something like 20 a day at this point. Uh, did you see any progress when you were in toward mental health counseling support? Because the being in the service, particularly being in combat, is a by definition one of the toughest situations anyone can be in. Talk to me about what you saw in terms of mental health coverage and treatment during this period.
well, I had the advantage of my medical officers. It's a very small medical group at the division level for the Seabees, okay? And our medical officers are always and always have been psychiatrists. And so the captains that I worked for were psychiatrists. We experienced initially in the 2005, 6, 7 area, quite a few suicides. Our Seabees, some of our detachments were guards at prisons in Iraq. And so we saw a lot of suicides initially when they came back. And by a lot, I mean our reserve side as well as the active duty side. So that was a central focus that our medical officers were working with. And I just felt like it took a while to understand everything that was happening and what they needed. But by the time I left the Seabees, they had a lot of good counseling in place. We saw those initial ones, but the numbers had gone down, and because that's been 10, 11 years now, but the numbers had gone down somewhat for us then. And one of the pieces that we worked on was that post-deployment health assessment. And that was, I mean, the questions that are asked as part of that were to really get at, what the soldier, sailor.
My dog wants to get into this interview. Do you hear her in the background?
I do.
Yeah. Let me let her out. Wait a minute. I had that happen on national television the other day. That was kind of fun.
Sometimes my cat jumps up in my lap when I'm doing a Zoom thing, so it's like you see a tail go by. So
you said something interesting. I've met with veterans and medical people in the military about this problem of suicide, and apparently the highest danger point is shortly after separation from the service. The period between separation from active duty and the handoff to the VA. Have you observed that?
I haven't observed that, but when you're talking about the separation, the highest incident that I saw on my active duty time was right after they, redeployed. They came back home.
Okay.
We're back in a regular home setting. And it was usually, within a few months of that time frame. So they were back in the field, which can be the same idea on the reserve side. It is like coming, when they're deployed on the reserve side, they come back and then they're thrown right into the community again. So, but we would to catch as many. So
I've been arguing for years in Washington that the military, the Pentagon, should spend as much time and money on the separation process as they do on the recruitment process. That they ought to do a better job of the handoff between defense and the VA, and that to realize what the stresses are, and that it ought to be I just think it ought to be a better process. It worries me that a lot of veterans fall between the cracks during that period of separation. And that's where you come in. That's where the Legion can be so helpful.
It can. We've got some great service officers with the Legion and the other veterans, service groups. They also have, I know a number of them out at the VA with, VFW, with DAV, with Maine Bureau, with Maine Veteran Services in Augusta. So there's a lot of service officers out there, and we are constantly putting out the word, but it's surprising. I know a number of vets, that were post 9/11, and it's like, look, we want to connect you, we want to get you connected. We don't care if you join the Legion or the VFW or the DAV, but either, we just want to help you,
Right.
we can connect you with somebody to talk to and to get the benefits that you deserve. That's the big thing. I mean, it's touching base there. I'm working with a lady, a fellow vet right now. She retired over 20 years ago, and she's got, there's a lot of things going on with her. And it's like, come on, it only takes 5 minutes. I got the phone number for you. Let's make that call, And my cousin, it took him, he served a couple tours way back during Vietnam, and it was just, finally getting in and trusting people enough to finally go and get the services that he was entitled to. I mean, he's even he was down in North Carolina for all the stuff that went on down there too. So in addition to Agent Orange, he's got all these other things going on. So, but so many don't don't want to be a burden, and they, and it's convincing people that you're not a burden, that you need to, we want to help you. I mean,
Sure.
that's what we want to do. So, and that's what
Well,
we tried to do is I was saying with those post-deployment health assessments, we also have a reassessment that's 60 to 90 days out, and it's trying to catch some of the answers, catching some of that information, because if they're going right back to the community when they leave, and way back, because I say way back, it was 9 years ago that I retired, that the medical records did not connect. Apparently they do now, which is good. The DOD and the VA connecting, those
uh,
records so that they can talk to each other.
yeah,
So,
I remember it was a nightmare that, and sort of hard to understand that they couldn't easily transfer back and forth. It's one of the things we need to keep working on. Well, what
yeah,
I like, Deb, is you've never stopped serving. Uh, you, you're still helping people, and definitely engaged in the community, and I think a lot of people don't realize the role that the VSOs play, that the veteran service organizations play as a kind of connector, just as you said, trying to connect people, and that's really a lot of what the Legion's all about, isn't it?
it is. It is. I mean that, the rehabilitation of our vets. I mean, that's what we stand for, as well as, our children's programs too. So we do a lot with kids, and those are my two favorite things are kids and vets. So that's that's kind of what I like to do the most. And so I like our children's programs too, with our Dirigo State, and
Sure.
Boys and Girls State, and oratorical, and Flag
You want to
Day.
hear you want to hear something funny that most people don't know in Maine?
What?
I was the governor of Boys State 55 years ago.
Really? Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
isn't that hilarious? It
That's
wasn't
great.
Maine, but we don't talk about that. But and so my relationship to the Legion goes back to those days. It was such a meaningful experience for me, and as a junior in high school.
Yeah.
Um, well, listen, Deb, it's been great to hang out with you this afternoon to hear your story, and we've met before, and I'm sure we'll meet again sometime. I hope to see you down here in Brunswick, either at the base. You're not allowed to call it the base. We got to call it the landing.
The
But
landing. That's right. The
for
landing.
you,
Yeah.
for you and I, it will always be the base or the wonderful memorial on the Brunswick Mall.
Yeah.
Deb, thank you so much for all you're doing and all you have done for the country and for the veterans of Maine.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you too.
Great.
Take care.
See you later.
Bye.